All right, y'all, this is the speed run of this or that urgent reviews and just recommendations that y'all had requests for. I took them in the comments of my last video. I took them on Instagram, and I have made an entire list of 30 questions that I feel like satisfy almost all of the questions that y'all had. And if yours isn't in here, it's because I don't own the products that you were asking about and I don't have time to go to Sephora to go get them right now. So speaking of time being of the essence, I'm going to try and make this, like I said, a speed run. This is going to be as efficient as possible, hopefully. I'm going to probably swatch only the things that I think a visual is the only way to really explain something. And also, because I'm going to have timestamps down below, pretty exhaustive timestamps, and there is a character limit that I tend to exceed constantly in my description box, I'm going to put one Sephora affiliate link down there. That way, if you decide that you want to be so charitable as to give me credit for your Sephora purchase, you can just click that link and navigate wherever you're going. As long as my link is the last one you click before you check out, I'll get credit for it and you don't have to. So anyway, you got my notes? Let's go ahead and jump in. So hungry. Ow. Ow. I just got 3 of these Patrick Ta eyeshadow duos in the mail today from Sephora. Like, I bought them. I got Talk to My Team, Do You Know Who I Am, and Still at the Club. Now, I saw Still at the Club online and I was like, that's gonna be too cool for me, but I bought it anyway because I knew that unless I could prove it, everyone in the comments was gonna be like, prove it. It's too cool for me. Talk to My Team is pretty much invisible. I mean, those are just some pretty garden variety shimmers. I don't think that anyone needs to pay $42 for that. I'm not saying that like 2 beautiful eyeshadows aren't worth $42. I see a lot of conflicting opinions in my comments. I just don't think that those 2 particular eyeshadows are worth $42. These are what I have on my eyes right now. This is Do You Know Who I Am? And this is the duo of the 3 that I feel like makes sense. They have 2 different textures to them that layer really beautifully and wear really beautifully on their own. The gold, like the more yellow gold, is a little bit more translucent, a little bit more of a topper. And then the, I guess, more neutral gold by comparison has a little bit more pigment and like foil shine consistency on the skin. However, expectation versus reality, we were all expecting cream, were we not? I saw in the description, at least on the announcements, that it was going to be a cream-based formula. No, this is actually kind of an unpleasant formula to interact with. I was really surprised because I dipped my finger in there and like, I'm gonna put it up to the microphone. Do you hear that? It's a little scratchy and like, does it result in something unbelievable on my eyes? Yes. Is it better than the, what were they called? Those cute little ones from Charlotte Tilbury, Future Khaki. Hypnotizing pop shots, darling. It's actually better in terms of not falling out and wear time. Like, it's just a more committed formula, but the formulas differ so much duo to duo. It's like I can't give you an up or down on the whole collection because they're so different from each other. But like, you can see that pretty much anybody who has a like neutral undertone to cool is gonna have a beautiful bedroomized time with those, but they are, when they get on my eyes, sooty. So if you are like me where you have a little bit of yellow in your undertone, like you're neutral, but things tend to go kind of gray on your eyes, you need red in your brown for it to pull true brown, this is not for you. I knew it when I looked at it, but like every makeup brand wants to make a color that's this color. It seems to work for a lot of people. It's this just shimmery taupe thing, and it's never brown enough for me. Bronze Brocade from Kulfi, which is a fantastic bedroomized brown for me. You can see how copper it is, how warm it is by comparison. It just has a lot of gold in it. It's rich, and that works on me, and that does not. I find them to be fairly comparable to the Charlotte Tilbury singles. Again, I have no idea what they're called for some reason. Charlotte Tilbury. They're not entirely unspecial, but they're not blowing my mind at all. If there is anything remarkable to be said about them, it's for the gold duo. But they do remind me a lot of the Charlotte Tilbury singles. So if you have those, skip it. A Stay Put foundation foundation for oily skin, pore minimizing, dry, and sets down. They gave me 3 options: the Dior Stick, the Westman Atelier Concealer as a foundation, Hourglass Concealer as a foundation, and Kulfi Concealer as a foundation. So, to reiterate, a foundation that stays put. We are taking options that are not foundations, but they are willing to use concealers as a foundation. Oily skin, a wide understanding that a lot of foundations are still going to be too slippy, and so again, willing to compromise and use a concealer. And pore minimizing and with a dry set down. So the Kulfi concealer blends forever and it's going to be really emollient. I would not recommend it for that purpose. The Dior Stick is absolutely gorgeous, but it is very much a skin finish. It is not doing much for oil control, so I wouldn't recommend that. The Westman Atelier concealer is pretty and it does dry down. I would not recommend using that as a foundation because it's just, that's a pretty expensive habit. And also the Hourglass is the #1 choice that I would have recommended had you not even given me options, because it is so beautifully long wearing. It has a really flexible matte texture with a ton of coverage, and I feel like you could get a lot of flexibility out of it. And I'm pretty sure the shade range is pretty good. So I would recommend that one, Hourglass for sure. Hourglass blush or RMS blush. I assume that you mean powders because I don't think that RMS has a liquid blush. To me, this is not an either or, but I do understand why you would ask. So, and RMS is not at Sephora, but I get what you're saying. Hourglass is blurring and gorgeous and really, really flattering on the skin and so user-friendly. I feel like it builds slowly and the colors are really ambiguous. As someone who has a very trained color theory eye, Hourglass blushes are like, huh? Like they tend to be marbled, and even if they're not, they're just kind of like vague, you know, they're very vague colors. And so as you put them on, you're like, okay, I can see that that's going a little warmer or that's going a little bit cooler, but you're not getting the commitment to color the way that you do with the RMS powder blushes. They are this like true symphony of whatever color that they have decided to be, and they also have a beautiful blurring quality on the skin, but they're not as like finely milled. They have a little bit more like emollients to them, whereas the Hourglass are notoriously baked. So if you're looking for something that wears feather light and you want it to build slowly and be super user-friendly, go Hourglass, but I do recommend doing a palette instead of picking a single blush unless you know exactly what you're looking for, because the colors are really weird and vague and ambiguous, even for someone like me. And if you want something where you can really predict the color that you're putting down and you're like excited about a very specific color value, you're like, I want a truly gorgeous coral, then go with the RMS. I think that there are use cases for both, but they are quite different from each other. YSL versus Armani liquid blush. I did pull these out just so that I could kind of get my head around them. The main thing here is I'm not really a fan of either one. Okay, I'll set my feelings aside. I'm not really a fan of either one because this has too low of pigment and this has too high of pigment, but also I think that the colors are just a miscalculation in the YSL, and not because Gloria didn't like them, but like I think that a medium rose should feel really easy to apply, and when this goes on, it's just kind of like hovering on top of the skin. It almost has like too much of a powder finish and it's like too opaque. It just doesn't look natural. I'm never happy that I put one of these on. This is a much more serum consistency, and so it does really bond with the skin, but like it's so serumy that it would push your makeup around after a while if you're really trying to build it. And so I don't think either one is like a standalone like A+ purchase. Does that make sense? Mark this moment, because I don't say this very often, but the best one that you're gonna find in that realm at Sephora, probably gonna be Say. That liquid blush is really good. It's really good and it's really user-friendly and the colors are great. And it's a lot less expensive than either one of those. Patrick Ta foundation versus the Givenchy Prisme Libre concealer, I'm assuming, as foundation, because it is well priced and a lot of people use it as a foundation. And I'm glad that they provided the context. They said looking for something more elevated for special occasions. I adore the Patrick Ta foundation, but elevated for special occasions, she is not. I would highly recommend the Givenchy over the Patrick Ta for long wearing purposes, for coverage purposes, for not being reflective in photographing purposes, and also for like being able to be powdered purposes. I think the Givenchy just behaves more like makeup, and if you were asking me which one I liked, it would be a toss-up, but like the Patrick Ta is just, it's like a casual foundation, you know? It's just this balmy, beautiful, like glowy, everyday foundation. I do not think that it is like for being photographed necessarily. And it doesn't love powder. Can't decide on under eye concealer for 50 plus, 50, you know, age-wise. And they are between Westman Atelier or Natasha Denona. Between the two, I would say Westman Atelier, but depending on your skin tone, I would recommend maybe trying out the Sarah Creal, okay? She actually left a comment on my last video and she was like, yes, we're working on expanding the shade range, so that is coming. They are, you know, self-funded, but the shade range is a little bit limited. If you don't see something that, you know, pleases you, don't spend the money on it just trying to get close. I would still go for the Westman Atelier. It's beautiful. But all the people in my comments who came to, I don't know, not disagree with me as much as just inform me of their experience with the Sarah Creal, the people who do have, admittedly in the comments, maturing under eyes, said that it is the best thing that they've ever tried. So I don't have the right point of view in order to know that. I'm only one person with one face and two under eyes. And so I'm just kind of crowdsourcing that information. I would highly recommend trying that. Up or down on the Milk Glow Primer. Okay, so the Milk Glow Primer is a version of the Hydro Grip that has had a golden shimmer added to it. This all depends on your opinion of the Hydro Grip Primer. My opinion of the Hydro Grip Primer, and when I tried this again, the same thing happened, is that no matter how little you put on, yes, it is really smoothing and it does lock your makeup in place, but you'll notice that all the places that your face bends, there's almost like a higher profile of makeup there, you know? It's like, it's thicker, and it's because it basically puts this like weird glycerin-y mask on your face before you put your makeup on. If that doesn't bug you, it's really pretty, you know? But as far as primers that have shimmer to them at the Sephora sale, I think the In Beauty Project one is probably my favorite, and the In Beauty Project SPF is also incredible. And not at Sephora, I would go for the Vive, the Skin Nova. It's absolutely beautiful. Those bond with the skin better. I just don't love that the Hydro Grip and the Glow Hydro Grip just kind of like sit there. They're weird. Someone just asked straight out for mascara recommendations at Sephora. So if you want a tubing mascara, I do recommend the Sarah Creal. I think it is quite expensive, but it is good. It's a little bit more kind of fluttery and not as quick building for a tubing mascara, which might be good for some people. And then Hourglass. Hourglass is probably the most sophisticated one that I've ever tried, besides my beloved Thrive. But in a pinch, I would use Hourglass all day long. That's what I would spend my money on. And if I had the discipline above the level of a toddler to actually rinse mascara out of my eyelashes, which I do not. I had a horrible eye infection last year because I was testing so many regular mascaras, brand new out of the tube. It wasn't the fault of the mascara. I just lacked the discipline to actually rub my eyes, and I refused to. And so I eventually got this really nasty eye infection that was there for like 6 months. So that's why I don't use regular mascaras, but in that time period, I did learn that if I were to, my absolute favorite one, hands down at Sephora, is the Omicole. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so pretty. It's like the perfect Goldilocks mascara. It builds volume. It builds length. It holds curl. It dries fast, and it washes off fairly easily if you, again, have the discipline higher than a toddler to rinse it off. So highly recommend the Omicole. And it's in this like chic orange tube. It's like really easy to find in your collection. 10 out of 10. Makeup by Mario Moonlight versus Lisa Eldridge Vega. The reason I'm not holding up Lisa Eldridge Vega is because I, if anyone recalls, disassembled all of my Lisa Eldridge palettes and I reassembled them the way that I wanted them. However, Vega is a more useful and more exciting palette. I actually think that Vega is my second favorite of the initial release, my first being Cinnabar. Cinnabar was just the easiest for me to use, but Vega was the most exciting. And it's actually really useful. And it's a very wearable gray palette, whereas the Makeup by Mario one, not only do I not like the formula of the mattes, like they're really dusty. They're really dusty and sooty. I'm so sorry. They really are. Like they don't have anywhere near even the unctuousness I felt like the warmer one had and etherealized, but I really miss his old formula that he had in the quads. That was one of the most beautiful hybrid formulas. In fact, his old matte formula, I would compare more closely to some of Lisa Eldridge's matte formulas because they have that kind of like silicone grip to them that's so satisfying, but she really does, she goes all the way with it. Her matte formulas are quite grippy, and if that's not for you, you know, and you like kind of a dustier formula, fine, but I experienced a lot of fallout with the Mega by Mario palette, and I found the shimmers to be pretty underwhelming, and the coolness was like kind of prohibitive. If you have like really cool tone skin and you really like those colors, maybe, but I still just think Vega's the better buy, and I think it's less expensive for what I consider to be a much more luxurious experience. Yes, there are fewer shadows, but I don't think that you need a bunch of like cool neutral mattes. If you are already a cool undertoned person, Vega is going to like open up new exciting pathways in your brain for like cool tones. I really love Vega. There's imagination in Vega, you know? The Moonlight palette is like, wow. Foundation for humid, hot, premenopausal, sweating it off. I am opening this one up to the class, okay? Because I have no idea. That is not my skin type or my skin need. I guess in terms of guideposts, I would say no matter what you do, I would recommend getting a really good setting spray like the Hourglass Veil setting spray because it will withstand anything. It's bulletproof. But also I think that a lot of times we fall into the trap of thinking that if I want my oily skin to be able to withstand the humidity and the heat, I need to put on the most matte makeup and I need to powder it a lot. And if you're getting photographed, sure, but what tends to happen is that if something happens to the makeup, if it sweats off, it's so obvious. And so it's like you kind of want something that wears in instead of like showing a really harsh line of demarcation from wearing off. That's just my opinion. You know, it's like I'd almost just say less is more, like go in just with concealer or something. But again, I'm gonna open that one up to the class. I'll pin a comment, be like, here, everyone give your advice to this person because I wanna start a conversation. Y'all absolutely, as a hive mind, know more about that than I do. But I still want this person to get their answers, you know? Oh my gosh. Glossier Stretch Concealer versus Fara Homidi, the her complexion compact or whatever. Two products have never been so different from one another, okay? Glossier Stretch Concealer is balmy, it's silicone-y, and it adds this like hydration layer on the skin. It's sort of like medium coverage, just absolutely gorgeous stuff. Gorgeous stuff. The Fara Homidi is also beautiful, but it is matte. It is dry. It is intensely pigmented. It's stiff. It really is the like least balmy version of a product like that I have ever used. So it might as well almost be like a powder foundation in my opinion. It's like that hard to get it started. If either of those polls sounds like too much for you, I would recommend going for the Monica Blender cover. It's that at Sephora. You can get it at like Nordstrom, but what a phenomenal product. I think I just need to rebuy it. What a great product. The only reason I don't have it anymore is because I over tightened the lid and I cracked it and there was like glass in my makeup and I was like, meh. And it's like $55 and I just never found a reason to rebuy it, but I think I should. That same person asked two more things. They said Kulfi versus Haus Labs concealer. Again, two things have rarely been so different from each other. Haus Labs has a matte finish to it, very similar to the Tower 28, and it is hydrating, but it is like it's kind of a medium coverage and it like dries down and has its own like almost like a powder finish. You know, you don't have to powder it. And I find the Tower 28 to be a more useful version of the execution of that brief, right? Like it has more coverage and so you can get more out of it. I felt the Haus Labs to be a little bit frustrating because as I blended it, I felt like it blended away. I was like, you know, the Tower 28 is just like more satisfying for that particular use case. Kulfi is balmy. It has like almost like a castor oil base to it and it is infinitely spreadable. So they're just very different. I do prefer the Kulfi though. The Kulfi is just more skincare-like. It just feels lovely on the skin. And then they also said Dior or Make Beauty sculpting stick. What are you talking about? Make Beauty sculpting stick. Please leave a comment for clarity. I would love to get your question answered, but I don't know what you're talking about. Lisa Eldridge skin tint versus Danessa Myricks skin tint. I knew this one was going to come up and I'm really glad that y'all asked. So Lisa Eldridge skin tint is like if you took the Prada, and I'll explain that in a second, and like thinned it out and made it the consistency of like one of those tinted oils. If you've ever used one of those tinted oils, there was like, you know, obviously the first one was from Kosas, and then Josie Marin had one, and Vapor Beauty, RIP. And people really loved them, but like, they were low tech and nobody really makes them anymore. Lisa took that weightless consistency and just packed it with performance somehow. So it is this ultra blurring, beautiful, just natural looking skin finish. It's not particularly dewy. It just looks like a natural skin finish, but it's very, very flattering. Like it doesn't look dry on my skin. Lots of things look dry on my skin. And 12 hours later, it is still there. I've never experienced a skin tint that performs like that one does. And I thought I was crazy, but then apropos of nothing, I started getting comments saying the same thing. And that is when you wear the Lisa Eldridge skin tint and you take it off at the end of the day, your skin is better. It has something in it that like heals my blemishes, and I can't explain it. And I'm just not gonna ask questions. I'm not gonna say that it's gonna do that for everyone, but I will say I'm not the only one who has said that they put it on a blemish, they washed it off that night, and the blemish was significantly reduced or gone. Take that at face value. It might just be lore, but you know, A+ if that's the case. Danessa Myricks skin tint is so beautiful, but it is quite present on the skin. High performing though, like it does set down. It's not like present and balmy and sticky. You know, it does still feel like a skin tint, but compared to the Lisa Eldridge, it has presence to it. And the presence of it is kind of this like nourishment, right? Because it has this lovely like glycerin dewy finish to it that looks like healthy hydrated skin. But it has more coverage than almost any skin tint I've ever used. It's like pretty on par with like the Eaze Drop, the liquid Eaze Drop, but like only in coverage, not in finish at all. The Eaze Drop is like a very special secret third thing. But use case wise, I would say that I prefer, even though I absolutely love the Danessa Myricks, I reach for the Lisa Eldridge always above anything else because it is weightless. You just don't know you're wearing it. And it looks as incredible when you get home at the end of the night as it did that morning when you put it on. So it's just kind of in a league of its own. Someone asked for a recommendation on a clean cream bronzer stick. And I know people bristle at the word clean, but we're also in like the territory of me loving like a contour stick that has a fragrance to it because it's luxury. So when we're talking about luxury fashion houses, like I do a lot, I will fall in love with products, but like clean means usually that there's no added fragrance, usually. Some brands just,
brother,
I don't know. But either way, there are brands that self-identify as clean, and I'm gonna go with that. So I would say Merit is probably the one that I would recommend that like self-identifies as clean, that is a stick bronzer. The component tends to fail. The first time I opened mine, it shot across the room and I was like, that's not an auspicious start, Merit. They've probably fixed that since then. It's been a couple of years, and I think that the colors are really good. It is very low pigment. It's just a very like wearable, balmy, pretty, but like it's a sophisticated formula. And if what you want is just that it doesn't have a fragrance to it, the Makeup by Mario original bronzer sticks are great. And they are so much product for your money. They're 10.5 grams for your money and they have a lot of shades. I really, really recommend those. Okay, so this is an interesting question. They're originally between the Danessa Myricks skin tint, which they have not tried yet, and the Fenty Eaze Drop, which they have a sample. Rude. They have a sample of, and they like the finish of it. So if you like the finish of the Eaze Drop, the Danessa Myricks skin tint is not for you. I would say that she has products that are for you, but it would be more in the realm of her like balm powder. That's gonna give you a very similar finish to the Eaze Drop, but like that Eaze Drop finish is, again, a beautiful secret third thing. It's so gorgeous. And I'm assuming also you mean the liquid Eaze Drop, because the Eaze Drop stick is also quite dewy. I'm just assuming that that's what you meant. I mean, honestly, if you're between the Danessa Myricks and the Fenty stick, you can't go wrong, but that Fenty stick is, gorgeous. They said they could use more coverage, so the Fenty stick is out of the conversation now. And I don't think that you're going to be satisfied with the Danessa Myricks in terms of finish, even though it does have more coverage. So I have a recommendation, okay? I think that the Prada foundation might be exactly what you're looking for because it has this like hybrid satin finish that is mimicking the Eavesdrop a little bit, where it works on a lot of different skin types. But alternatively, you might think of buying the Eavesdrop because it is less expensive and you do like the finish, and adding something like the Hourglass concealer, because the Hourglass concealer has a lot more coverage and a very similar beautiful like matte finish to it, but like again, like that in between hybrid matte finish that just like photographs beautifully and wears forever. So I would probably recommend just adding a concealer. Okay, Patrick Ta versus Armani blush. I'm assuming you mean the powders. So on breakdown, if this matters to you, we did find out that the Armani powder blushes, as beautiful as they are the most expensive powder blush pound for pound, I think, at Sephora. They're just not very much product. Not that you're working your way all the way through a blush. I'm not sure if you are. The colors, when they got rid of the like main character beige that was on the Armani website, I kind of like lost the plot with them, especially because there are a lot of brands that have also come out with beautiful coral colors. And the beauty of the Patrick Ta blushes is that he really innovated there. I feel like he has kind of lacked innovation in other releases, but the whole thing was the Patrick Ta method of applying a powder blush and then using a balm that was like not that pigmented and often not quite exactly the same color on top of it to bring the skin finish back, but you still get the wear time and you still get like the pigment payoff of a powder. I think that the Patrick Ta ones are a lot more innovative, and the Armani ones are pretty, but like other things have come out since then that are better. Summer Fridays or OleHenriksen lip balm, easy. I'm gonna piss some people off if you haven't already been here. I don't really like the Summer Fridays lip balm. I don't understand the appeal of it, but I've said it before, I'll say it again. Lip balm ingredients tend to be very binary as to what works for people and what doesn't. And when something doesn't work for you, it tends to somehow do the opposite. You know, it's like, oh, this product really nourishes my lips, and other people are like, oh, weird, because it makes mine peel off like napalm, you know, and you're just like, why can't we find something that works for more people? I'm not saying that the Summer Fridays is like horrible, but it just doesn't really like communicate with my lips. And I don't really like the appearance of it. I got like the birthday one or whatever, and it's just kind of like this blah, silvery pink on my lips. I'm like, ew. Like it's just, and it's not very shiny. I don't get it. And then I put on that OleHenriksen and I was like, there's something special about that. I just can't explain it. It's just really good. The application of it, like well, actually the applicators I think are the same, pretty much the same, but it's just really good and it's beautiful. Like it looks really beautiful and elegant when you're wearing it. Whereas I just think that the Summer Fridays is just kind of like a status symbol. Calls them like I sees them. The Phytosurgence versus Sarah Creal lip balm. And I haven't actually talked about the Phytosurgence, but I have it in the pocket of my robe because I use it a lot. This is Clear Coast, which is the clear shade, and I like it a lot. I do. It's beautiful. I don't think that you need to pay $42 for the Sarah Creal. This does work, but if I'm thinking of like what heals my lips, I'm applying this more often to just kind of like satisfy my hydration needs, whereas like I put on the Sarah Creal and that was it. You know what I mean? It just becomes like instant legend in your life where you're like, oh, okay, fine. I don't know what you put in that, but it works in one go. It's not a routine as much as it is like it heals you. And again, lip product, things that work for people tend to like, for some reason, burn off other people's flesh. I'm not sure why that is, but the Sarah Creal works beautifully for me. You decide whether that quality is worth the difference between $42 and what I think is probably pretty affordable. I think this is probably like $16 American or something. So Jason never does a bad job. I just think that the Sarah Creal is like incredibly special to the point that I wanted so badly to hate it because of the price point and because I think that the packaging is a little bit flimsy for what it is. I want it to feel a little bit more luxurious, kind of like the Lisa Eldridge ones, and it still overcame all of those misgivings and became like my new favorite lip balm, so sorry. Okay, best YSL quad for olive neutral. They asked me between two of them. I think that they said Storadolls or Overbrune, which is the new one that's like cool and warm. And I reached out to some of my olive tone friends and they were like, neither. You want 200, which is Galee's Dream, because it has a little bit of like a mauve leaning haze to everything, which is exactly what you need for olive undertones to make colors show up truer and not pull orange. So that is my recommendation, although I do think that Overbrune, I haven't tried it yet, but it looks really pretty. Someone asked a very unique question, and again, if you want to sound off in the comments about this, feel free, but they gave this really long, elaborate, like novel in my comments about all the different powders that they had tried on their olive undertone, and how even things that were like neutral or translucent or white or turning pink on them, you'll have to pardon this. And they said that like probably what they really needed was like a lavender powder, but they don't really know where those are. And like, you know, fine, sure. Consider that you are maybe the one very specific niche use case for that Prada green setting powder, because it does, they said that they really like the Kosas, and it does behave a lot like the Kosas, except it's not building as much like actual pigment opacity, but it still has that lovely, gorgeous, blurred, perfected finish. And the whole time I was using it, I was like, this is great. Why is it green? This is actually really lovely. I didn't want to like this. Why is it green? You know, and I was like, I guess it's green. But if it's green, by God, it's not gonna pull pink, okay? That is a promise. So I know it's expensive, but like, I know it's expensive. I didn't realize it was $90. I mean, I paid for it, but I didn't realize it was $90 damn. So I did a little searcheroo and I found that there actually is like a Tarte loose powder that's lavender. That's not that helpful, but I do want to apologize and say like, I know it's expensive. Like $90 is still like cannot be contained within I know it's expensive for a powder. That's stupid. This one's quick and easy, and up or down on the Pat McGrath blush sticks. They're not special. They're just not special. They're pretty. There's nothing wrong with them, but there's nothing particularly unforgettable about them. I think that honestly, putting R&D dollars behind something forgettable is one of the most egregious cardinal sins that you can make in the beauty industry right now, and those things are forgettable. Okay, next, Patrick Ta Foundation or NARS Light Reflecting Foundation. They gave me context on this because they said that the light reflecting is looking less good after wearing it for 2 years. They have mature skin. They feel like as their skin is aging, their holy grail of the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation is looking less and less good. It's like drying up in patches and clinging and stuff like that. Something to bear in mind with the NARS Light Reflecting Foundation and why it kind of fell out of favor for me is because it is water-based. I don't know that that means that it like doesn't have silicones in it or like doesn't have oils in it, but it's mostly like waxes and then water is the first ingredient. Bear in mind, all of the other things that you're using on your skin, have those things changed possibly, or has your skin become oilier possibly? Absolutely. Aging changes our skin, and it is quite possible that it just doesn't really like that foundation as much anymore. But before you just throw it out, I would recommend looking into the base of whatever it is you're using it with, because, you know, if you've got like a hyaluronic acid on underneath it, it might be pulling the moisture directly out of that foundation and just leaving a dry substance on your face. I'm not a scientist, but I think that that's how that would work. I think. Chemists, sound off in the comments. It is a finicky formula when combining it with other things in my experience. The Patrick Ta is so hydrating and so gorgeous, and it is quite low coverage. It really looks like beautiful skincare on the skin, that if that is an issue that you're having, I think that you would really like it. But again, it might not be something where you need to go and spend $58 on a new foundation, or like, you know, start a whole journey of like trying to find your new foundation because this one failed you, and maybe just like take a look at some of the other things in your routine that might have changed over the last couple of years. And of course, it goes without saying, make sure that your bottle isn't expired. A small full look eye palette that is similar in vibes, right, to the 300 palette that I love so much here from YSL. So we're talking about a great balance of kind of warmth and shimmer. Someone's asking for that and they're saying, can you give me something a little less expensive, which is like not an unreasonable ask. That they're just very expensive. They're silly overpriced. So I came up with a few for you. The no one talks about this anymore. But that Ilia compact with the 6 eyeshadows, they make a cool and a warm. I was shocked. They still make it and it's still at Sephora. I loved those and they sold out for the longest time. And then I didn't know whether they brought them back, but I had both and they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous. So that formula is beautiful and they're only $40, but you get 6 eyeshadows in there, which is, you know, different than, what is this thing? Like, it's like $68 or something absolutely bananas. Like it's stupid. And then, you know, less than that is the Charlotte Tilbury. The Charlotte Tilbury quads. Exaggerize is sold out right now, but that one's cool toned anyway. But I think Pillow Talk would be kind of in the same realm, but I still think that the Ilia one would be more satisfying for you. And then also there is this tiny, and it might be great for travel, honestly, little Pat McGrath 6-pan that they're selling right now for $29. I don't know. I mean, it looks like it's really small, but like, I never finish eyeshadows anyway. Like, what a cool little thing to have. And absolutely vouch for a Pat McGrath eyeshadow formula. They're gorgeous. And it really looks like it would satisfy the same need. So hopefully that helps. Kulfi Sona Sona versus the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude gold shimmer in the center of the palette. I live for this stuff. Okay, let's go. Here is Sona Sona. Woo! Someone did say that they returned this because they didn't like all the glitter, and they said that they liked the Charlotte Tilbury Eyes to Mesmerize better, and I was like, those are 2 very different products. I don't blame you. Like, this is an absolute glitter bomb, and like, those are so subtle. Woo, girl! Sona Sona is so freaking pretty. Wow. Ooh, while we're at it, let's go ahead and swatch those against that. Okay, pretty similar finish to the lighter one, but Sona Sona is more kind of pinky neutral. And then I'm in love with this prompt. I'm in love with this. I don't even know what color we're about to swatch. Muse. Right there. I love it. And honestly, it's gonna be so similar because y'all know everything. Let's see. How do y'all do this? Every time there's like at least one situation like this where someone goes, can you swatch these 2 things that like my brain has just stored in completely different wings of my mental library? And then that happens. Like, what? So this right here is the center shade in I Need a Nude, and that's Sona Sona. I mean, the one in I Need a Nude's a little pinker, but like, how do y'all do this every time? That is absolutely wild. I'm impressed. I'm just impressed with y'all. The other thing with Sona Sona is it's glitterier. The one in the middle of the Natasha Denona palette is very foiled. Still a little bit of glitter, but mostly foiled. And this one has a lot more texture. Just a lot more texture, you know? Catches the light differently. Still, like, I feel honored to have attracted such fascinating, curious, intelligent people to my channel. So thank you. Surratt versus a YSL quad. Yeah, y'all, I always say that they're very similar to each other. Surratt is a more it's just a more sophisticated formula, but I find that the shimmers are not as satisfying. And I find that the colors are a little harder to navigate. Whereas YSL has just put them in a lovely little compact for you that's very easy to understand, and it's very easy to get several looks out of. And I have had so much trial and error with getting the right colors and the right textures from Surratt. Their formula is gorgeous. I do not believe that they make it quite as easy to get a beautiful, perfect quad as YSL does, because you can just pick one from YSL. And I think that it's just as good, just as easy to use. There's just a little more fallout to the formula. Dior Foundation Stick versus Westman Atelier for mature skin with sun damage and pigment. The Westman Atelier Stick is not something that I would necessarily use as a foundation. I would use it as like a spot concealing camouflage stick. Is high coverage. And it is quite satin matte. I won't say it's like matte like oil controlling drying, but it's satin matte. It's like a very like satin version of a skin finish, whereas I'm wearing the Dior right now and it looks like skin. And if you get a really good shade match, which I did not, I only have it kind of here and here, because if I were to apply it here, you'd be able to see a big line of demarcation. You could apply it all over your whole face and blend it. And I mean, I don't recommend wearing a ton of it. It actually does its job without you needing to wear a lot of it. But like, you just kind of press it in with a damp sponge and it looks like your skin. It really looks like your skin, but just better. So I would say in the case of what you're actually asking for, like a foundation that's gonna like just sort of honor what your skin is doing and like bend with it and move with it and not look unnatural, the Dior, but make sure you get a good shade match. For reference, I bought 1N and it's a little bit too dark for me. So anyway, I hope you all found this valuable. Please feel free to talk amongst yourselves in the comments. I want to get a conversation going here so that everyone can get the answers that they need from the people who know more than I do about some of these things. It's a very kind community. Let's keep it that way, Janine. And if you liked this, please do give the video a thumbs up. If you like my personality, subscribe to my personality and learn about makeup here on my channel. I will put a video up here that I think you'll enjoy if you liked this one. Happy hunting at the Sephora sale, y'all. I hope you're having a blast. I love you so much and I'll see you in the next one.